defense and turnovers. Sounds a lot like the Steelers of the 70s. Let's take a look by the numbers at the Steelers of the 70s. 4, that's how many Super Bowls the Steelers won there. Tied with the 49ers in the 80s for the most by any team in a single decade, but the Steelers did it 4 in 6 years. 691, that was the Steelers' winning percentage in that decade, winning 99 games in the 10 seasons. They won at least 10 games 7 times and had at least a share of the AFC's best record thrice. You want another number? How about 9? The Steelers produced 9 Hall of Fame players in that decade, including Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Lynn Swann, and Jack Lambert. All kinds of greatness from those Pittsburgh Steelers of the 70s. And with that in mind, we are delighted to be joined by one of those Hall of Famers, Franco Harris, and Gary Pomerantz, who just wrote a book, Their Lives' Work, about the Steelers of the 1970s and the brotherhood that they shared on and off the field. And Gary, I want to start with you because this is a football book, but it really isn't a football book. It goes into great detail about things that happened away from the field. What did you want Steeler fans of the 70s to know about their players that they didn't know?
Well, that their brotherhood, which really defined that team back in the day, still lives. You know, all these years later, decades later, and remember, 12 Steelers died before the age of 60. They've had their losses, but it's that brotherhood that is really the greatest gift the game gave them.
And to that point, Franco, what did you want people to know? Because you're so revered in that city anyway. What did you want people to know that perhaps they didn't know about how this team came together and how they worked together?
You know what, we won a lot of games on the field, and I want people to see in this book that what did it take off the field to help you win those games, the culture that you build, the brotherhood that you build.
It's a different era in the NFL now with free agency. Wasn't around when you were there. You drafted somebody and it was a trade, or you stayed with that team forever. Do you feel that brotherhood is still as strong as it was with you guys in the 70s?
You know what, it definitely is different now. There's no doubt about that. We had a very unique, special situation that would be hard to really match today.
And it seemed like it was a perfect, Gary, on many levels, combination of the players and the city that they were in. You go in one chapter talking about Franco's Italian army and the leader of that team, Alvento, and the relationship that you guys had for so many years and continued off the field. Those were the kind of bonds that this city formed with those players.
Remember, Steel was dying at that time. And so this team was its life raft. Pirates had a pretty good run, too, in 1979. And so what I was after here was just the stories behind the castle walls, you know, to put the reader in the locker room. They get to know the front four. And you know, of course, Joe Green now, with the passing of L.C. Greenwood, is the only surviving member of the front four. So to get into the emotions that drove the team to the heights, but also still lives within these guys today.
Well done bringing up the Pirates 1979 We Are Family team. By the way, that was the last time since the current World Series that we've had the best record in each the AL and the NL meeting as the Cardinals take on the Boston Red Sox in the World Series this year. All right, let's talk about dynasties. The Packers of the 60s, Steelers of the 70s, Niners of the 80s, Cowboys of the 90s, the Patriots of the aughts, for lack of a better, of the 2000s. Will we continue to see those dynasties, or has the game changed and there's been so much transition that'll be hard, Franco, do you think, for teams to do what you guys were able to do?
You know what, I like big rivalries, and during the 70s, those big rivalries is really what made our team, and really what helps makes those dynasties. I mean, we beat the Cowboys, the Oilers, the Oakland Raiders. I mean, those are the things that make the dynasties, and absolutely, we'll still see those type of matchups that will make dynasties.
You talk about so many of those players that have already passed away from that Steelers team of the 70s, and there was one passage in the book where you talk about getting together for a dinner to honor the Immaculate Reception and everything else, and you said something very interesting. You said, we can't wait another 5 years to do this every year because we are losing people and time becomes more precious. How much more do you want to cling on to those memories and see those guys as time continues to take away from the core of that team?
You know what, more and more. And with the passing of LC, and I think about last year we had our Immaculate Reception party. LC was there having a great time, had his Santa Claus hat on, and he's not with us this year. So, you know, that really brings it into full, full scope of what this is all about.
It's a fascinating book. It really is. If you're a football fan and you grew up in a certain time, it'll bring back a lot of memories, but it's more about what happens off the field than it is on the field, and one of the greatest teams we've ever seen. Their lives' work. As they say, available in bookstores now. Gary, we appreciate you being with us. Franco, always a pleasure to have you on the show, and we'll see what happens. You mentioned those great rivalries that the Steelers had. They had one with the Raiders, a game with the Raiders on Sunday. Didn't quite go the way the Steelers wanted it. I'm sure, though, that's a big part of Chris Berman's Fastest 3 Minutes.